Welcome to another episode, Pound for Pound Boxing Report, episode 238. I am your host, Michael. Joining me this week, Gail from Communities Digital News, Jacob from Japa Boxing. What's going on, lady and gent?
Hey, good evening, everybody. And there's more to the week than football. There is boxing.
There's always boxing.
Absolutely.
Boxing doesn't have an off season.
We are going to
Right.
find it no matter where it is.
Daniel from the Inscriber should be joining us later on in the show, but we'll get things started without him until he comes on. For those who are new to Pound for Pound Box Report, Pound for Pound Box Report, live YouTube show, podcast / blog discussing all things boxing. The motto is, when boxing is good, we'll talk about it. When it's bad, we'll talk about it. Bottom line is, if it concerns the sweet science, we will talk about it. If you want to find all information regarding Pound for Pound Box Report, the blog page is the place to go to, p4pboxingreport.wordpress.com. That's the link. Check the Rather page. You'll find links to where to find Pound for Pound Box Report all over social media, all over the interwebs, as well as where to listen to the show on all available podcast platforms, minus Spotify. We're not on there yet. And you also check the Rather page. Make sure to check out that donate button. Most things are not free in this world, including the production of this podcast. So there is a donate button to Cash Me and a PayPal donate button. So I don't care if it's $1, $5, $10, whatever you can spare. Shoot some spare change if you have some on hand to the Pound for Pound Box Report. It'll help production and whatnot. Let's get the things kicked off by recapping what went down last week. Actually, pretty good boxing action-wise. Let's start with the PBC card on Fox. And finally, we have the return of one Keith Thurman, one-time Thurman. Got back into the ring, fought Josesito Lopez, won by decision. But Thurman, and I'll go to you, Gail, Thurman had his way for the most part, but there were some real cause for concern here, particularly in that 7th round when Josesito Lopez hurt Thurman, pretty much battered him all over the ring for the most part. He looked in serious trouble, but he rebounded himself and did enough to gain the decision, coming off of almost a 2-year layoff, 22 months to be exact, Gil. And then you can follow up, Jake, and your impressions on how Thurman looked, that shaky moment in round 7, and what do you see from him moving forward?
Well, Thurman did what he needed to do to survive, to get the win. We hope to shake off the rust, but Josesito Lopez gave him much more of a challenge than we thought he would. And, he did exactly the right things against Thurman. He tried to make it a little bit messy. He wanted to make sure he got rough and engaged. The surprise was that Thurman entertained it at all. Whether he was thinking he needed to prove something to himself, to the audience, who knows? Thurman would have been far better off using his superior skills, boxing skills, to win the fight a little more easily. And while that wouldn't have been as entertaining for fans, it would have been a safer road. He came dangerously close to finding his backside on the canvas, not just in the 7th round, but again in the 9th round. It was far closer a fight than anyone thought. Josesito Lopez, props to him. That's a guy who never, ever gives less than his best effort. He comes up short, but it isn't as if he could have turned it up or found another gear or wasn't working hard enough. He always works plenty hard. I'm not sure that this fight answered more questions than it ended up asking. Where does Thurman really stand? Has time passed him by a little bit? What would he look like against a top welterweight? I mean, you've got to imagine Manny Pacquiao and his team are thinking, that doesn't look that. I think we could take that. I think that's a fight we could possibly win. Certainly more cause to think he could than if he looked at him 2 years ago. And if I'm Sean Porter, I'm thinking, damn, I could kick his ass now. I think this version of Thurman would not be a challenge. And Thurman has absolutely no business right now, without another fight or two to prove himself, going after anyone near the likes of Bud Crawford or Earl Spence. Not a chance. And let's hope he isn't quite that reckless. But he did what he had to do, but there are a lot of question marks left.
I see Daniel has joined us. Daniel from the Inscriber. I'll go to you, Jacob. Then you can follow up, Daniel. Your reaction to Thurman, his fight, his decision win over Lopez, how well or how bad did he look, and kind of prognosticate what you see from Keith Thurman moving forward following this win over Josesito Lopez. First you, Jacob, and then you, Daniel.
Yeah, I mean, he like Gail said, he did what he needed to do to win. He had Lopez down in the second round, and what I've noticed is Keith Thurman of the kind of the later version later on in his career is that he hasn't been able to finish his fighters when he gets them down or hurt. I know the one time is supposed to be like alluding to his power, but when he stepped up his competition, he's either doesn't get the guy down or, seriously hurt, or, he doesn't finish them. Like he had Robert Guerrero, I think, down in like the 9th round or whatever. And actually Guerrero came back in that fight. And like I said during the previous show, Thurman to me is a front runner. He starts off fast, but then he starts to fade. His conditioning isn't. It just to me, it's just never been there. He seems to struggle in those later rounds and lets the other opponent get back into the fight. I thought Lopez had the ability. We talked about playing the spoiler, and he almost did in that 7th round. He was clocking Thurman, and Thurman was kind of running around instead of maybe holding, which we probably should have done instead to buy him some time. But like Gail said, he came dangerously close to being upset. But it was kind of to what we expected, though, in a sense, because he had been out of the ring so long. He's coming off an injury, so it's kind of almost par for the course. I mean, he got the win. What I did notice is that, he didn't mention Earl Spence at all, which is, they've had multiple conversations about, fighting, and, he seems to, when he used to call Mayweather all the time, that was his thing. And now I think he's turned his attention to Pacquiao, which, would be a big money fight for him. So again, Gail had alluded to it earlier, is Thurman's head in the game of boxing itself, or is he potentially maybe just trying to get big fights to cash out, and then maybe he leaves the sport? That's to be answered. But I think a Pacquiao, even this 40-year-old Pacquiao could beat him. And I agree. I think a Porter beats him. I think even a Danny Garcia could beat him. So I would say he's the weakest link of the champions in that division.
As critical as I have been, and I'll go to you, Daniel, I'm going to give him a bit of a pass here, in spite of the shaky moments, because he's been on such a long layoff. I mean, at the end of our year-end show, recapping 2018, one of the predictions I made was that we will see, at the very least, negotiations for a Spence Thurman bout finally. I don't want to give up on that so quickly, in spite of what I saw. In spite of what I saw, it had me thinking that no way this dude beats Spence. Daniel, recap what you saw from Thurman. Will you give him a pass? Were you troubled by what you saw? Your overall impressions of Thurman coming basically off of a nearly 2-year layoff.
Half of me wants to give him a pass because of that. Because it is a significant layoff, and some injuries were involved in that. But like the way he fought, particularly after Lopez was landing a few punches, it reminded me actually of his fight with Jesus Caras, where Caras landed a really, really big shot, and Normally, you would expect guys at that stage in that career where Thurman was like this becoming a contender to try to hold, try to stay away. Thurman stood there. You remember, he stood there. He handled it well and ultimately won the fight. It's a similar case here. You could tell some of the rushes there, like his combinations weren't as crisp as they normally would. Some of the punches that he missed, he would have missed 2 years ago. That being said, this actually probably was the better fight for him in the long run because it wasn't a walk in the park. Josesito Lopez made him work for it and made him think about what he needs to improve on now that he's now off this hiatus because, yeah, it wasn't a pretty victory. He still won. The right man won. I would disagree a little bit some of the scorecards. I'm still trying to figure out how 113 happened. But I'm thinking of another fight. I'm sorry. But yeah, that ultimately is going to be probably good for Keith Thurman. I don't see a Spence fight happening, though, unless Thurman really, really gets active, like gets at least 2 or 3 more fights in this year to shake off the rust. But I doubt we're going to see that because one of those possible fights is Manny because Manny, for all intents and purposes, is mandatory. So he might go for the big money fight. And that'll be an interesting dynamic to see if Thurman will play it safe or if he's going to willing, like he was with Lopez, try to stand toe-to-toe with a guy like Manny.
I've heard you mention this. You just mentioned possible Thurman Pacquiao. Mentioned Pacquiao in the discussion about Thurman, both you and Gail. Is it basically said at this point that the fight for Thurman, the big fight down the road, is a fight with Manny Pacquiao? And everybody, open your mics up and please respond. If so, how soon do you think that will happen? Summer, fall this year?
I think it could. Now, let's remember, backing up a week, that after Pacquiao Broner, the speculation was, hey, are we going to get Pacquiao Mayweather too? You know, a lot of the players involved on Mayweather's side in particular, including Leonard Ellerby, are saying that is not going to happen. It's not in play, not going to happen. Assurances said with a straight face. Do we believe it? Remains to be seen. Let's be skeptical. But if that is true, and Pacquiao thinks he's got 2-3 more fights in him, what other fights can he make that are realistic? He doesn't want to go up against Crawford. He just doesn't. Thurman and Pacquiao starts to make more sense in the context of where they both are at this time of their careers and where the interest is. Who will put butts in seats? Because say what you will, Pacquiao fills arenas. He still does. And nobody knows when it's going to be the last time we see him. And at this point, we almost have to think of the same thing about Thurman. So maybe it is a roll of the dice and they go for it and put it in a big venue. And notice how enthusiastic Thurman seemed to be after the fight about fighting Pacquiao. I'll fight him in Las Vegas. I'll fight him in New York. I'll fight him in the Philippines if I need to. Ha, ha, ha. Is that on the up and up? You know, Thurman's a fairly straightforward guy. And if he says something like that after a fight, I do take him at face value. So, you know, if we're placing some bets, I think it's a pretty good one.
Jacob, Daniel, your thoughts on the prospect of a future showdown between one Keith Thurman and Manny Pacquiao?
I think it's almost a for sure thing. Now that Pacquiao's not with Top Rank, I mean that those politics are out of the way, and you know Pacquiao's only going to get older. You know, so I think he even said in his post-fight interview that you know, because they said, "Are you going to continue to fight?" And he said, "Yeah, you know, I feel good. I'm going to continue to fight." So this is, you know, they both I think want money, and this makes sense in the money sense. Gil's right. Pacquiao's going to pack the house. They did, a decent pay-per-view buy with the Broner fight. I think this fight would do even better as far as pay-per-view buys. So, I mean, it just makes sense all the way around because we know that, like Gil said, Pacquiao doesn't want to fight Crawford. Thurman doesn't want to fight Crawford, doesn't want to fight Spence. Spence is, tied up with Mikey Garcia, and actually I think that's ripe for an upset, but we could talk about that on another show. But all the pieces are in play. The only spoiler could be is if they do go after a Floyd Mayweather fight, and even after all the things that whatever they said, I mean, Floyd is his nickname is money, right? That's what he cares about. So he just picked up $9 million for an exhibition fight. If he can pick up another, whatever, $400 million, $500 million, I wouldn't put it past him to do a fight with Pacquiao. I mean, I think he knows that he can beat him, pretty easily. Because Pacquiao just is older and just is different. He's not the prime Pacquiao, and we're never going to get that back. So that's the only thing I think that could maybe upset this matchup. But other than that, I wouldn't be surprised if that fight gets announced, relatively, soon in the future.
Your thoughts, Daniel?
It's all going to depend on Floyd. Let's face it. It's all going to depend on Floyd. If Floyd legitimately does not want to do this, if he actually wants to focus on being a promoter, then it opens up the avenue because, like I said, it could give Keith enough time to get a little bit active and give them enough time for Manny to get a little bit active as well. If Floyd decides to do what I suspect Floyd's going to decide to do, then it's not going to happen this year. Because then all the attention is going to go towards that fight. And after that fight, there's very little money. It would, despite almost all of us not wanting to see it, at least hardcore ones, there's going to be enough financial incentive where it won't bother Manny as much to try to face Thurman, but it all depends on Floyd. Like I said, if he says he's staying retired, then then the avenue's open. If not, we're not going to see it to 2020.
During our previews last week, the next fight that I'm going to talk about now didn't really mention much about it. I don't think I mentioned it at all. But Gerald Washington getting into the ring against a fighter by the name, Polish fighter by the name of Kownacki, excuse me. I'll go to you on this one, Jacob, and then you can follow up Daniel and Gail. I'm not surprised that Kownacki beat Gerald Washington. What I'm surprised at is how he absolutely obliterated Gerald Washington, walked through him like water, splattered him all over the ring, multiple knockdowns, took him out in 2 rounds. Simply put, I didn't see that coming. Your thoughts?
I'm not a fan of Gerald Washington. I think he's garbage. I think he's just a big heavyweight, and he's marketed because of his size, but he doesn't fight like a big heavyweight. He doesn't use any of his attributes. So I can't say I'm too surprised that he got pounded out. I mean, he's just not, he's not a formidable opponent. And I didn't know anything about Kownacki, but I mean, from the looks of it, he looks like he's a headhunter. And he Gerald Washington doesn't have like the greatest chin in the world, so all he needed to do was land and just bully him, and that's what he did, and he won the fight.
Your reaction to what you saw, first Daniel, and then you, Gail.
Well, it was bound to happen, unfortunately. Gerald Washington is just unfortunately the latest in the line of former football players that take up boxing once football no longer becomes an avenue. Some of them make it a little bit far. Seth Mitchell was one of them, but ultimately they run into an actual fighter, somebody that has done this for a while. And that's what happened here. Like he didn't stand a chance, and in many ways, like I said, it's probably better for him because he probably was trying to live out the fact that he lasted a good bit against Wilder before he got ultimately knocked out by Wilder. So it's probably better for him to stay at this stage. Would it ultimately lead anywhere? I don't know. I don't know for Milwaukee because right now, like I said, the only avenue for him to get even a sliver title shot is Wilder, and for all intents and purposes, that's not going to happen right now. But it does keep him active. You can keep him in New York. Like I said, there's a large Polish population both in Brooklyn and in Long Island. So he's a fan favorite, and it's going to be fun to see. And for Gerald Washington, yeah, maybe, you're no longer a contender. But at least you were entertaining when you were there.
Yeah, I was. I go to you, Gail. I was covering the design card for Three Kings Boxing. You can check out my previews there on threekingsboxing.com. And I saw the result across my Twitter timeline, and I went back and watched the replay of it. And again, I didn't see that coming, Gail. Your reaction?
Well, here I am freely admitting that I had called an upset in favor of Washington. So you can all laugh. Go ahead. Laugh at me. I thought Washington had a good shot at Kownacki. He is big. He is blocky. He is, in some ways, the white big baby Miller. And he's a buddy of Jarrell Miller. They work out at the same gym. They travel in the same circles. They hang. They know each other. They're friends. You know, Kownacki's nickname is Babyface. So how would you like to see Babyface against Big Baby? Well, a lot of us think that would be a lot of fun, but at least in the short term, it's not going to happen because they're buddies. Kownacki's an interesting guy. You know, he freely says, listen, I am not a heavyweight in the Adonis mold of Joshua or Wilder or even Washington to a point, you know, tall, rangy, with the weight, you know, spread well, muscular guy. No. He's just a big, block, flabby dude. You know, he looks more like George Foreman than anything.
He's like a bigger white version of Andy Ruiz.
Yes, there you go. Very good. But
that's disrespecting Andy Ruiz.
Don't trash my man Adam. You know what? He has made the most so far of what he's got. He's undefeated. He's got 15 knockouts in 19 fights. Most of his fights have been on the East Coast. The few times he hasn't fought in the immediate, you know, tri-state area, he did fight on the card in Chicago several years ago at UIC Pavilion and had a pretty spectacular knockout of a, you know, Chicago cab driver or something. But nevertheless, he had a good showing there. He has also beaten Arthur Spilka, admittedly an older Spilka, 2 years ago, and he also have beat Charles Martin in his last fight. So, you know, he's seen as much talent as some of the other sort of B-level guys in the heavyweight division. Is he going to get a shot at Joshua or Wilder? No time soon. Is he a test for other guys trying to position themselves for those fights? Sure, he's in play. And he's agreeable. He does have his following. He has the New York crowd in general. He has the Polish fans like crazy. He was born in Poland and grew up in the New York area. So, you know, and he's ranked in the top 10 by some. So we'll see more of him. And he's pretty honest about himself. You know, he bottom line says, listen, I am what I am. Here it is. It's worked for me so far. Deal with it. Good for him.
Gail, I can't believe that you actually think Gerald Washington's good.
You know what? I am slightly colored by the fact that he's a good human being. His work ethic is excellent. But yeah, he came to boxing way too late. He was, you know, a pretty serious college football star injuries, turned to boxing. The truth is he really didn't start boxing seriously till he was 30 years old. So
Yeah, I mean, I'm not attacking his personality. I'm just talking about overall skills. He's been in and I think you've seen both of these fights because you were there. He was in some of the worst heavyweight fights I've ever seen.
You know what? Gerald will get good work because of his athleticism and his size as a sparring partner, should he want to continue, because he is that athletic, tall, heavyweight prototype. He does have that look of Wilder or Joshua. Guys preparing for somebody at that level, Washington will get plenty of work if he wants it.
He should go to Japan. They love that freak show over there. He reminds me of Bob Sapp. If you guys watch MMA, Bob Sapp. That's what he reminds me of. He's a big guy, but he has no skills.
Oh,
wow. Now the other fight that I have heard rumored, I'm going to bring this up, is Kownacki and Chris Arreola.
That would actually be fun.
I don't hate that. I don't hate that at all.
That would actually be fun. I would pay money to see that, actually.
That's a battle of the Titans for sure.
I'm not mad at that, actually. I'm not mad at that.
No, I'm not mad at that at all. But
Arreola just had a little tune-up fight, to see where he was. So it's doable. It's very doable.
Yeah, and oh my God, like that Bob Sapp reference, Jacob. Man, he robbed Antonio Inoue of so much money. It was just insane.
Tell me I'm wrong, though.
No, you're not. That's what makes it funny. It is almost the same exact comparison. The only difference is that luckily Washington hasn't delved into wrestling, where he might actually make some money.
Oh, now you know what? That is a very interesting point. He's very, he's a good-looking guy. He's very media friendly. He's a good interview. Well, we'll see if he's a listener to the Pound for Pound Report.
I mentioned that I was doing some coverage of the DAZN USA card for Three Kings Boxing. I want to talk about that now. I want to focus on two fights. The first fight, Jaime Munguia, who I'll be the first to admit I thought he was going to make easy work of Takeshi Inoue. Didn't turn out to be the case. Look, Munguia won by unanimous decision, but you got to give credit first and foremost to Takeshi Inoue, who showed himself to be hard as steel, came forward all night long, made Munguia dig deep throughout a lot of this fight. For me, and I'll go to you, Jacob, I give Inoue credit for how tough he was, and he kept finding a way to find looping shots, land with looping shots, overhand rights and left hooks on Takeshi Inoue. But it has to be said, questions about one, Munguia and his struggle to maintain 154 pounds, number one, and secondly, who ever thought it was a good idea to bring Robert Alcazar into their camp and work on quote unquote defense? They need to be fired, because Munguia, he kept getting with shots he should not have got hit with. I mentioned Inoue was throwing wide looping shots, but you could see him at times. You could just see him coming, and yet Munguia kept getting hit by them. So exciting fight, one, but two, the issue of Munguia's weight. It's pretty much known that he struggles at this weight. He lacked a certain snap in there, one, and two, the kid has to work on his defense.
Yeah, I mean, entertainment-wise, it was a great fight. But Munguia, what I saw him do in this fight has me a little concerned, because he was, instead of coming forward like he was doing against the opponents that we've seen him against, like Ali, and just, putting leather on him, he was moving backwards and he was boxing from a distance, and he was getting caught his back to the ropes. And I think I even talked to his trainer And he said, he's got to stop, getting caught on the ropes. We keep on telling him, get off the ropes, because that's what Inoue was doing. He was putting his head in his chest and just, landing those right hands. So I agree with you. He needs to work on his defense, but I found it odd that Munguia chose this style to fight with, because when he did kind of put himself in the pocket and stand toe to toe, he did hurt Inoue a couple times. And Inoue he's a tough kid, man. He got hit with some good shots, but he was a tough kid. But his legs buckled a few times. One time, I think his knee barely, almost grazed the ground on a shot that Munguia did. So to me, it's kind of like one of those fights where you're taking unnecessary punishment, in a sense where you probably could have got him out of there if you would have kind of reverted back to your old style. So I'm not sure what that was about. They said that he didn't have problem making the weight, but again, I mean, I'm sure
I'm
they're
not
not
buying
going to.
that.
Well, like I was going to say, that they're not going to broadcast if they did have problems, because they don't want to they don't want that to be somebody else's advantage. But I'm hoping before he moves up, I mean, because they said that he's going to move up at some point, that they can get a fight with Jarrett Hurd. I think that would be a really entertaining, good fight. Or maybe they both move up and we see the fight at 160.
I'll go to you, Daniel, and then you can follow up last, Gail. Do you share similar concern in terms of Munguia and how he looked? Do you share similar concerns of one about his weight and difficulty maintaining 154 pounds, and two, the defensive liabilities and lapses that you saw in this fight with Inoue?
I'll tackle the defensive liabilities first. And it's one of the reasons why I agree with Jacob that the best fight for him right now is Jarrett Hurd. Because they both pretty much are the same fighter when it comes to mentality, which is, I'll eat whatever punches I have to eat so long as I land mine. And it works for Munguia in a way, especially with a guy like Inoue, who, for as much tenacity as he had, and for as much the vibes that he gave me when it came to like calling back Omar Figueroa versus Isho Arakawa, for as much as that fight reminded me of it, there are a lot of defensive lapses that happened in that fight. But it also showed something to Munguia that, yeah, we know like he would like him coming forward, but it shows that he knows his range. Where when Inoue came in, yeah, he smothered a lot of his defense and he was able to, but he knew his range when landing the effective punches. Yeah, and there were at least probably 4 instances where Inoue was really, really hurt. I think it was the 7th or the 8th round where that knee situation that Jacob mentioned went down, and that is good, showing that he still measures the distance and that he can still handle the power. The problem is, though, it's gonna be that weight during his career in the amateur career, what he had a little bit, and as a prospect, he has bounced around between middleweight and junior middleweight. So the issue was always going to come up, and from when people hear about it, his camp might try to, or he might try to say he wasn't trouble making weight. There are plenty of people around that saw that, yeah, he was having trouble making weight. Yes, he didn't have as much problem as when Brandon Rios turns into Skeletor, but it was getting pretty close. So the move is coming. And the kid's young. The kid's 22. So he's still growing into his body. Like, it will come a point where he will be a super middleweight, but the move will probably going to be happen sooner rather than later, because he has bounced around from middleweight to junior middleweight, so his body's already used to it. It isn't something like what Canelo did, where he gradually accepted that his body was no longer going to be able to make junior middleweight. He's bounced around for it, and as long as he can provide exciting fights, which we all know he can, it'll be pretty interesting, unfortunately, because all the other players in the division, like from Hurd to Jermel to Harrison to Lubin to J-Rock, are all with Heyman.
Your reaction, Gil?
Funny, we were talking, Daniel and I, the night of the fight, and I said, this is reminding me more of Vargas Mura. Daniel goes, Figueroa Arakawa. But you get the idea if you didn't see the fight. Inoue, say what you will, he is one tough bastard. Oh my God. And if you were on the Twitter sphere or social media later in the evening or the next day after the fight, video surfaced from Munguia's promoter, Zanfer. Munguia and Inoue ran into each other in the parking lot, leaving the Toyota Center, and posed together for photos. And they're slapping each other's back, and it's just well, it was an interesting video. What is worth noting is looking at the condition of both of the guys several hours after the fight. Munguia didn't appear to have a mark on him. Inoue's face is a mess. So he may have dished it out, but he took a lot of punishment. But he will go back to Japan with enormous admiration and respect. It did not hurt him in his career at all. As for Munguia, it was a test that was probably inevitable. And yes, it's, the writing's been on the wall that he's going to have to move up in weight. But it wasn't a question of if, it's a question of when. Of course, he'd probably like to stick around where he is for as long as he can, but it ain't happening. And he's acknowledged that. He thinks he might have one more fight or two at 154. That's it. He's done. And after this performance, he and his camp may go back and say, I think you're done here. And there's plenty of low-level players in the middleweight division that he can sort of practice his craft on, see how he feels up at 160, see whether the power translates, see what kind of strength he can put on going up to 160. It'll be fun to watch. I don't think any of us should give too much credence. Who's snoring?
Is that Michael?
I think that's Mike.
Oh, my Lord. Michael, wake up there, buddy.
No,
I don't think we need to worry too much about Munguia just yet. I think I put him to sleep, everybody. Jeez.
I thought EJ got into the chat.
I thought that too.
I'm sorry, y'all. I'm sorry.
I pulled my EJ duties for that one.
That's right. No, not a worry. In any event, tougher fight than we thought for Munguia. He survived. What I did have a problem with, and most people I know did, those cards were far too wide. It was the right result, certainly. It should have been a unanimous decision. That's not a question. Did Mura not win at least a couple rounds? Seriously?
I think I gave him at least 4 rounds.
Texas judging, for Christ's sake. It's almost as if is this worse than Nevada judging, in my opinion. Yikes.
Hey, did you guys see the pre? So they were both at the Rockets game, and they did a face-off, and they really got in each other's face.
Yeah.
You guys see that?
Yeah, I saw that, and it seemed like he meant business then. Inoue, I want to read a couple comments from the chat here. Shout out to Big Rotten Apple for joining us. Overhand for joining us in the YouTube chat. He says that Andy Ruiz recently signed with PBC, so he wouldn't mind seeing Ruiz versus Kownacki. He says Overhand in the chat, YouTube chat, says that Munguia needs to learn how to jab more and fight tall. He also says he needs to go 2-year process and move up to 160. Yeah, that was me. That was me making that noise. I just worked out, just finished eating as well. My bad, y'all.
Oh, you got the itis.
Oh, you could have blamed it on the dog or something, man.
No, I just finished eating as well, and and like I said, I just not too long worked out and showered, so food and all that stuff, eating as well. So that's where the noise was coming from. Let's move on to the undercard fight of that Munguia main event, and this could be arguably the fight of the year, as Jesus Rojas, defending a version of the WBA belt at 126 pounds, fought a Chinese fighter by the name of Khan Shu. Shu ended up winning the fight, but by a wider margin than many felt that he deserved. But because of that, it kind of marred away somewhat the fight, which was a terrific fight. These cats went at it toe to toe from beginning. Khan Shu, he showed that he wasn't messing around. He came to fight. He came to win. Took the fight to Rojas. Rojas took the fight back to him. I don't remember Daniel one clinch in the fight. Just terrific action all around. So in spite of some people being upset at the width of the judges' scorecards in favor of Shu, the bottom line for me is one of the fights of the year of 2019.
Oh, absolutely. That was beautiful. That was a beautiful way to end the fight. And Hushan definitely earned that victory. He stepped in. He landed the better combination. He was still better conditioned throughout the fight, even in the late rounds. It was a great performance. His Rojas had nothing to be ashamed of. Like, he fought valiantly throughout of it. And I'm glad that, like I said, not too many people agreed with the scorecards, because those were just god-awful. Scorecards. So I'm glad this fight happened, and ultimately,
What is the show of sounds or what? What's going on here?
I think I have my phone on it, but
Answer the damn phone.
I will in a little bit. But just ended up really great fight. I agree with you.
I go to you, Gail. If you saw the fight, your reaction to what you saw. Again, I was covering for Three Kings. I was also live tweeting about it. I gave both fighters a round of applause. I mean, fights like that are why you're a boxing fan.
Here. Absolutely right. You just never quite know how a matchup's going to turn out. We can predict all we want. We can look at things on paper and think, not that interesting. Well, we'll check it out. You never know until the combatants get in the ring. Really exciting fight. Really, tension filled in all the right ways. Good performances. You felt that both guys were fighting up to the absolute highest level of their skills they could. And who wouldn't want to see both of them again? And that is a victory for both those guys, no matter which one won. So good for them. China is a nation of so many people and so many great athletes in so many other sports. It is sort of a question mark why we haven't seen championship level boxers coming out of China in greater volume. And every time a guy like Zhu Can succeeds, you inspire maybe a few more guys to give it a go and see if they can't get a chance on the world stage. And when you do get that chance, like he did, you have got to make the most of it. And that's exactly what he did. Well done to both of them.
Your thoughts on the fight, Jacob? And my question to you, to kind of Gail's point, want to see him fight again. My question to you, Jacob, because of how good the fight was, do you think you'll see a rematch between these two? I would love to see it.
I think there's definitely a possibility that we could see a rematch, because unlike the judges, I think most people had it, close fight. So the judges don't make, the next fights, it's the matchmakers. So it was a good, entertaining fight. It was a good lead up to the main event. And DAZN, I mean, they need to, obviously do some work on their cards. I mean, this is probably one of the better cards that they've had all year. I mean, since they started. I know it's early in this year, but I think, like fights like this, it was a easily early contender for fight of the year, and you can take these two guys and match them up against each other or match them with other people, and they're gonna go out there and entertain, get the crowd kind of warmed up before, for a main event. So I think they both earn that, and I think DAZN will do good by them. Again, I had Kenya winning, but it wasn't by a wide margin. It was a very close fight. I mean, there were some rounds in there where they could have gone either way, but nothing to hang their head about. Rojas' head about. He put on a great performance. They both did. They both gave it their all, and I would welcome a rematch. I hope, with a fight this close, I think Rojas deserves at least that.
Indeed, I agree. Coming off of the fight with Jojo Diaz, however, this is kind of the second loss in a row. But again, kind of show he won some fans, at least here stateside, because I heard a lot of
me.
Yeah,
I
a lot of
didn't know too much
discussion.
about him, and now I want to see this guy fight again.
Yeah, a lot of talk in the aftermath on boxing Twitter, at least regarding from my timeline, was like, hey, where did this guy come from? And didn't know he was this good. So yeah, terrific fight. And if it was me, I would try to rematch these two as soon as you can, possibly summer or fall on another DAZN card. I want to move on to some news here. And the saga of Anthony Joshua. He's not going to fight Deontay Wilder next, but seems to be his next opponent seems to be down to two guys, either Dillian Whyte in April or Big Baby Miller, whose name came up in the discussion about Kownacki and his win with Gerald Washington. Either a fight with Dillian Whyte or a fight with Big Baby Miller, May, June. I'll go to you, Gail, and then you can follow up, Jacob and Daniel. Your reaction to this saga, not saga, but who do you think we will see Joshua in the ring with next?
I think it's absolutely going to be Dillian Whyte. That's a makeable fight. It's a big money maker in the UK. Talking about butts in seats, which seems to be a running theme tonight. That's going to put butts in seats. Dillian is much more top of mind there for fans, given his rather spectacular win over Derek Chisora. And, if anybody's earned the right to a rematch, it's Dillian Whyte. I don't hate it. We say that a lot on this show. I don't hate that fight. Whyte's win is fresh in my mind, and I'm sure it's fresh in the fans' mind. And that to me, the timing is right coming off that fight for Whyte. It makes sense for Joshua to give him the rematch, because let's remember, of everybody that Joshua has fought in his still young career, other than Klitschko, the guy that gave him the most trouble was Dillian Whyte. They've both improved greatly since then. Let's see it.
I'll go to you, Jacob and Daniel. Your thoughts. Who do you think Anthony Joshua will choose to fight? Dillian Whyte, who is, according to reports, that agreed to a deal to fight Anthony Joshua on April 13th, or Big Baby Miller, who disclosed earlier this week that he had received an offer to fight Anthony Joshua. I believe it was in June.
I think it will be Dillian Whyte for the reasons that Gail said. I mean, it's an easy fight to make, with Hearn. They've done it before. Like Gail said, he's one of the ones that gave Joshua some trouble. He's beat him, I think, 2 or 3 times in the amateurs. So they have kind of like a little bit of a rivalry, and Whyte has earned that rematch. I mean, he's been the road warrior in the sense that he's just gone out there and fight after fight after fight. He gets the wins. The fight I would like to see more, though, just because I like Big Baby Miller, and also because Joshua's never fought him before. I think that would be I'd be interested to see how that plays out. So that's the fight I kind of selfishly would rather see, But I'm not, like Gail said, we're not mad at if Whyte got that opportunity that he deserves. He's done everything that he needed to secure that rematch. I think it will probably end in a similar fashion, because even though Whyte has maybe gotten better in some respects, he still has some deficiencies to his game. I mean, he had he had a tough fight with Chisora. He even the second fight he was getting hit, and he caught Chisora. But he's had some problems in some of his fights. So I think Joshua would still beat him.
I know, Daniel, you had to step away if you've returned. Your thoughts on who Anthony Joshua, who we will see him in the ring against next? Do you think you will see Joshua fight a rematch against Dillian Whyte, or do you think he will entertain the prospect of fighting Big Baby Miller here in the U.S. in June? I think Daniel has stepped away. We'll come back to him once he gets back. But let's move on to some other news. Update on one Adonis Stevenson, who, as we know, following his loss, losing the title, injuries suffered in the ring resulted in a him being put in a medically induced coma. Well, got an update on that. He lost on December 1st. Update has now, according to his girlfriend and to other reports, that nearly 2 months after the brain injury that he suffered against Gavastik in that loss in Quebec City, that Stevenson is able to walk and is starting to speak. So Gail, Jacob, Daniel, your reaction to what can only be described as the positive news in the continued recovery of one Adonis Stevenson.
It's very good news. And what it speaks to is when there is attention given to these guys after the fights and there's any sign of trouble, when it's acted on quickly, there is so much better a chance of recovery. Immediately after the fight, Stevenson left the ring on his own. It wasn't until shortly after, when he was in the shower, apparently, that he started feeling signs of distress and a serious headache. And immediately it was taken seriously. Immediately he was transported for medical attention. And it seems that that decision to act quickly and not hesitate and not wait may allow him to eventually have enough of a recovery to live a decent life, for the rest of his years. That's a lesson to everyone in boxing. You should err on the side of caution, getting these guys out of the ring to medical attention quickly. Speed is your friend in a situation like this. I'm very glad to hear that the signs are positive.
Your reaction, Jacob, to the positive news regarding one Adonis Stevenson.
Same thing that Gail said. It's good news that it's moving in a positive direction. He got out of his coma. He's now, I guess, taking his early steps to walking and talking. So that it might be a long, slow road, but hopefully, he's got the care there, and medical science is, taking a forward step. It does every year, every decade. So, hopefully they can continue to rehabilitate him so that he can get back to a semi-normal life and, enjoy his family and later part of his life.
I see Daniel is back. One, Daniel, your reaction to the improving news, the improving health, and the ongoing recovery of one Adonis Stevenson, and the topic we talked about earlier in the news segment. I want to get your response to that. Do you think we will see Anthony Joshua in the ring in a rematch against Dillian Whyte, or do you think we will see him stateside here against one Big Baby Miller?
I find it funny that this news, particularly like the Big Baby news, just happens to come almost a day after while the Fury 2 news comes up. And to me, it's telling in a way. I think Eddie pretty much acknowledging that right now, the talk of the town in heavyweight is not Anthony Joshua. It's Deontay Wilder and Tyson Fury in the rematch. And I think it's probably him realizing that maybe April 13th won't be such a shoo-in as he thinks it'll be for Joshua's brand to expand. Because as far as the UK goes, you can put Anthony Joshua against a broomstick and it'll sell out. Is at that point. But you can't just be catering to the UK fan base anymore if you're trying to expand, especially now when the guy that a lot of UK people wanted to see you against is fighting the other guy that all the rest of the world wanted to see you against again. And there's a good chance that their fight will easily double what they did in the pay-per-view this time. So I find it interesting. I still lean more towards April 13th because I don't think Eddie Hearns does really want to let go of that date on Wembley. Because if he does, that's in a way admitting defeat. As far like when it comes to Adonis, I'm very happy. I know we talked a lot of trash about him. I know some of the things he's done, both in the ring and in life, haven't exactly been exemplary, but it's good to see somebody recovering that well, because you don't want to see a Magdaleno situation again, where a guy just takes a beating. And granted, yeah, the Magdaleno situation is just a matter of incompetence on a lot of parties, but at least a situation where he's starting to walk, he's starting to talk, and we know with that type of injury, it's going to take a while. He's never really going to be fully 100%, but he'll at least be able to recover, and he'll at least be able to live his life. That's the main point. He is at least going to be willing to live his life, whatever way it takes him, because whether it could be as a commentator or it could be something else, at least he'll get a chance to live his life.
Indeed. And again, as you said, Daniel, as much, Adonis Stevenson has been a lightning rod to many in the sport, and certainly here, he's drawn us his share of criticisms here, but you never want to see what happened to him as a result of the loss to Gavostic, and we continue to send our thoughts and prayers to him and wishing him a speedy and as full of recovery as possible. Let's move on to preview some fights that's happening.
Real quick, another bit of news. I don't know if you caught this, but George Groves announced his retirement.
Oh yeah. I thought this may happen, given the way he looked against Callum Smith. To me, he looked a bit uninspired, and there have been rumblings about him since that bout that he may indeed call it today. So yeah, he announced yesterday, I believe it was, that he's finally calling a career. Quick word from you, Jacob, as well as you, Daniel, on the announced retirement of one George Groves.
I congratulate him on his career, and I hope he stays retired. Unlike most boxers that end up coming back, so hopefully financially he's done well for himself. I can't do anything but wish him well. I wasn't his biggest fan, but he went in there and he fought the fights, and he was the winner of the the super middleweight tournament. So
Yeah, World Boxing Super Series, super middleweight tournament. Yes.
yeah, so he has that, and he had some 2 great fights with Froch and some other people. I think DeGale he fought, and various people. So I wish him well.
Your reaction, Daniel, to the retirement of George Groves?
A good career, serviceable career. Obviously, the highlights came in late. He'll be known as a serviceable fighter, and his most famous fights are the 2 fights that he had with Carl Froch. Whether the first one you really believe he lost or not, it did lead to the second fight, and it was serviceable. He became a champion, but ultimately, the younger generation was just there. It's ready, to put their stamp in the division. And even though, he's not that old, he's 30. But in boxing years, he's done a lot. And wish him the best. Hopefully, and I do mean hopefully, this becomes one of the retirements where it actually sticks, and not one of those where in a year you hear about comeback.
Yeah, but you know how boxing is. All too often is the case that a boxer announces retirement only to return to the ring not too long later. And as you said, Daniel, let's hope this is a case where he retires and stays retired. Let's move on to preview some fights, namely the card that's going down in Frisco, Texas on Saturday, I believe, on ESPN, as well as ESPN Plus, ESPN Deportes. Going to talk about the main event last. Want to talk about other fights in the interim. We began this show talking about the return of one-time Keith Thurman. Going to begin this preview with you, Jacob, talking about the return of Oscar Valdez, coming off that tough fight against Quigg. He won by decision, but he had his jaw broken in the process. One of the best fights of 2018. Brutal fight. Fighting an Italian guy by the name of Tommosone. I'm sorry, I'm not familiar with him, so I'm gonna lean on you on this one. Your reaction, your thoughts on the fight. On the surface, it looks like this is kind of a soft touch for Valdez, Jacob, given the fact that he's suffered a broken jaw his last time in the ring.
I think Jacob bounced.
Oh man, he bounced. So I go to you, Daniel. Your thoughts?
It's a good test in a way to it, because not only is he coming back from injury, he's coming in a new trainer. He's coming in now with the Reynosos in his corner. So a soft touch is allowed in this case to me. Like, you're recovering from injury and you're trying to get used to the new trainers, but you need to start. You're gonna have to start getting busy, because fairly soon, like, if you stay active and if you keep winning, you're going to be asked for unifications. You're going to be asked for Warrington. And who knows? Like I said, if Top Rank is really serious about fast-tracking Shakur Stevenson, they might put you in him with him. So it'll be a good test just to see how his jaw goes, and that's why hopefully it'll work out pretty well.
Going to go with you on this next fight as well, because I saw Jacob stepped out. I saw Gail has stepped out as well. Teofimo Lopez, to many, the prospect of the year of 2018, ended the year in sensational fashion, knocking out Mason Menard. He's coming back into the ring on the undercard of this bout, fighting Diego Magdaleno, who, has a resume. He's a pretty tough guy. In short, Daniel, do you think that you will see Teofimo Lopez impress in the same way that he did against Magdaleno to cap off the year last year?
This is going to be a good test to do it in, and it can pretty much show that you have a lot of confidence in the kid like Teofimo Lopez when you're putting him against a guy that has a good resume like that. And you're going to have to see how you're going to fast track him, because remember, they have him at lightweight. They have Joshua Greer now signed at lightweight. Mayweather, I think Mayweather Promotions, it's with Devin Haney. We know Golden Boy has Ryan Garcia. And we know for the fact that Top Rank does, like I said, does still have the top dog in Lomachenko in the division. It shows a lot of confidence that you're going to throw a kid, like I said, with somebody like that, with that resume, especially almost as a reward for that emphatic knockout.
Yeah.
And reward him by showing him, okay, we're going to step into the deeper waters now. Let's see if you're actually ready, because right now your division is becoming pretty crowded.
Also on this card is bout for the vacant IBF lightweight title, formerly held by Garcia, Mikey Garcia. Yes, Richard Commey, who a lot of people believe is kind of like an uncrowned champion. There are plenty of folks out here who felt he beat Robert Easter when he fought for the vacant IBF title. A lot of people believe he beat Denis Shakovov in Russia. Well, Commey getting that opportunity to fight for a world title again, fighting again for the vacant IBF belt against a Russian fighter by the name of Chaniev. I'm gonna admit bias here. I'm rooting for Commey. I think he's that good. And based on the little clips I've seen of Chaniev, I think Chaniev is solid. But I think if Commey is on his game, I think he wins. I think he's a little bit more of a talented fighter than Chaniev. He can do a little bit more. And the hunger factor, I think having fallen short barely of two big opportunities at the world level, I think he's not going to let this opportunity pass a third time. Your thoughts, Daniel?
Yeah, this is pretty much the make or break point for Commey at this stage, because like I mentioned, it's the division, like we just talked about, it's full, and it's full of young guys, and you can't let it pass by, especially when, like I said, you're in the card where, luckily, like I said, you have the top dog in the division as part of the promotion, as far as the group that is doing the promotion, Lomachenko. But he needs to capitalize on this. Like I said, I'm one of the people that believes he beat Easter. He came very close to Shafikov. And this better be make or break, because otherwise there's not much to do, because he goes into like a different trajectory of a like Mauricio Herrera or Pablo Cesar Cano. And granted, Cano won his last fight. Like I said, he put himself right back in the spotlight with the way he won. But at a certain point, like, people start giving you chances, and he's such a comfort fighter, has such tenacity that there's going to be a lot of top guys that are just going to want to stay away from him at that point. So yeah, this is it. This is his chance.
Let's move on to the final fight of this particular card, which is the main event. Eleider Alvarez versus Sergey Kovalev, the rematch. They fought summer last year, I believe it was. Alvarez upset Kovalev, stopped him in round 7. They're fighting a rematch, and we have to address this because this is part of the backstory, even though you're not hearing much of anything at all about this, and that is the arrest of the arrest of Kovalev, who was charged a couple of weeks ago with felony assault, putting hands on a woman from an incident last June. Talk about the fight first of all. Talk about the fight, yeah, Daniel, but the lack of discussion in the lead up to this. Are you surprised? Because I'm thinking, okay, this is a pretty significant story, a pretty significant charge, and yet whether it's ESPN, whether it's main events, it's almost like an effort to not even mention the incident. And I'm like, okay, what if this was another fighter here? What if this was a Broner? Do you think they would try to sweep this under the rug with him? I mean, they talked about, or another fighter. Um, do you find it odd that you've heard nothing at all about the troubles of Kovalev heading into this fight?
Like you said first, I'm going to address the fight first because I was there in the first fight, and it's going to be interesting to see how confident Alvarez is going to come in now that he has a champion, now that he knows he can hurt Kovalev. Is he going to go for the gusto early, or is he going to do what he started to do in the first fight, which is establish jab, establish your distance, and start breaking him down as the rounds go on? Because there's no incentive for him to let it go long. He could end it easy. He could go for it easily. Now, granted, that leaves an avenue open for a guy like Kovalev, who is still heavy-handed, can still land for it decently, and that might be the way where he gains back the title because he knocks you out. So it's going to be interesting to see what Alvarez shows up, because the confidence that a fighter builds up when he knows that he hurt the other guy badly and he won. And he knows the opportunities that await for him after this, should he win. And Alvarez does have a lot of good opportunities coming in his way. Is he going to try to go for the gusto, or is he going to make it a boxing match, try to prove that it wasn't a lucky punch, that he's just a better fighter? And Kovalev has to be the one that proves it. Now, as far as the entire controversy goes, we have to reach the point where, remember, this got exposed, I think, last week or 2 weeks ago. And because he got exposed to last 3 weeks ago, it's not given a lot of time to it. And I'm not going to expect ESPN to cover this because they have a vested interest in this. They are the network airing this. Maybe they may have an epilogue afterwards where they can try to frame it afterwards, but they're not going to let it get into the way of this fight.
Yeah, but I just think it would be, for lack of a better word, dishonest on their parts if they continue to ignore it, whether in the lead up to this fight or even on fight night of itself.
I really doubt they're going to get a chance to ignore it, because as much as ESPN, like I said, has the power of broadcasting rights, they're not going to be able to control everybody on tomorrow in the press conference or after the weigh-in or after the fight. They're not going to be able to control it, because it's not only the onus on Kovalev, the onus is mainly on Kathy Duva, because she made a gigantic bluster, really big bluster, particularly I think when they compared it to Stevenson, and especially after the Marcus Brown fight fell through, saying that I'm not going to work with a fighter that has this charge on them, that has this record on them. And lo and behold, allegedly, we have to frame the thing allegedly, Kovalev is at a party in Big Bear. He hits on a woman. She refuses his advances. And then he winds up assaulting her, allegedly. And this is in August. We're now in January. So that's a long time for that gap to go into it. And I'm sorry, Kathy Duva probably knew at a certain point, like, wait a minute, why do you have to go to court? Why I get incident reports? Why is this department bothering me about this. The onus is going to be on her because she made the big proclamation on that, and right now she's dealing with a fighter that is being accused of something very serious, and that thing that is very serious is the very thing you blustered about. And that's not to get into the whole factor, the fact that Kovalev's a married man with a son.
Yeah.
So that stuff's a whole other minefield.
Well, given the little back and forth with Clarissa Shields, let's just face it, he has a certain attitude about women. So yeah.
That's the whole thing. Like, it's a pattern with Kovalev in a way. The main difference that he has been able to do is because this is the first instance that I can think of right now off the top of my head where his name has come up in something like this, where actual police and actual court systems are involved. And everybody, and that's probably why some people are trying to give him a pass. Some, not all. I'm not going to give him a pass on this. No, sir. No. Remember, you went and called a man called Chickenson, and then you mentioned, I think he mentioned the history Adonis Stevenson had before with the pimping. Got to do with it too, I think.
Yep.
Yeah, karma's many things. A bitch is one of them. So it's gonna come to ruin one day, and yes, it might wind up costing your career. It might wind up costing you any representation that you had, but in many ways, it's kind of good in a way because now we get to see what Kovalev is, and Kovalev is probably, along with guys like Canelo and Golovkin, the last like great fighters that were cultivated via HBO, where you saw them come into greatness via HBO. Now you have to see. We know Canelo's going to pass a test. We don't know about Golovkin because he hasn't made a decision yet. But this is the time for it to show were you really a good fighter? Were you really a great fighter? Or was this a case of really good storytelling by a network that knew how to tell stories? And now that you're out of it, the real you's coming out.
When they fought the first time, I still felt that Kovalev was in the process of trying to recover from the two bouts with Andre Ward. I'm not necessarily talking physical, I'm talking mental, because Andre Ward took his invincibility away from Kovalev, kind of pulled his card, particularly in the second fight. Coming off of, again, getting stopped against Alvarez, his chin is a serious question now. His mental resolve is a serious question now. Given this incident, given the fact that he has a new trainer in Buddy McGirt, you think he has to take a process of orientation to get adjusted to a new trainer. I believe this is his third trainer in a little over a year.
Yeah. Yes, because we know, not so much over a year, it's like 18 months, but it still speaks in two trainers. Okay, you had a falling out with John David Jackson because you blamed him for the first Ward loss, and then you just wound up doing worse. You had strained relations throughout. And then the second fight, you pick your own guys, and it didn't work out. So now you're going to go with somebody and Buddy McGirt, who is a good trainer, knows what he's doing, and it's also a trainer that doesn't take crap from his fighters.
Yeah, can Kovalev win? Yes. Can he defeat Alvarez by knockout? Yes. He has the talent and the power to do so. But again, it's the mental makeup, given all the distractions. I just think, for me, things around him are just too combustible at this point. And all signs says that Alvarez will beat him. It could possibly stop him again. If I'm Alvarez, I'm trying to test his chin early just to see where his head is at. I would try to focus on the body because we also know that Kovalev's weak in the gut. See if you can hurt him early, extend him some rounds, and then see if you can take him out late. That's the formula for me. And I think Alvarez, coming off of that win, the confidence that you gain from that knockout win, I think he can do that. I think he's going to take his game up to another level. And for me, I just think because of all the stuff that's going on with Kovalev, physically, more importantly, in his head and in his life, I just don't think he's going to be fully there. I think Alvarez beats him again, Daniel.
It's a fair chance. Like you always give a return to the champion. And like I said, Kovalev has a partner's chance. And that's the danger. Like I said, I know your argument when it comes to test him early, try to see the gut. But that gives you enough of an opening where Kovalev may land something. But that's going to be what the big test is because, like I mentioned, he has opportunities in the future. If he's now with ESPN Top Rank, guess what? If he's still there, you can unify with Vostek. Oh, but you have a good relationship in main events. Oh, you can fight Bibble. Or because you can work with main events and Yvonne Michelle has a good relationship with a lot of the promoters in the Northeast. Let's say Bibble beats. Or gets upset by Joe Smith. You can fight Joe Smith and you can fight Beterbiev too. There's opportunities for Alvarez on every corner as far as fighting and unifying.
Indeed, so it's going to be an interesting fight. It's going to be an interesting card, and I think we're going to start to shut the show down on that note. I want to thank Gail and Jacob for joining us early in the show. If you want to reach out to Gail from Community Digital News, talk boxing, talk small business advice, Dancing with the Stars, Game of Thrones, you can reach her on Twitter at PR Pro San Diego. You can reach her out on Twitter there. Also, Jacob from Jab Hook, also a frequent guest of the Wrong Reel podcast. It's a podcast that discusses movies. You can check him out on Twitter, JRATM23. Going to you, Daniel, for those who want to talk the sweet science, for those who want to talk the NBA, especially when it comes to the Miami Heat, let the folks know where they can find you.
All right, so you can find me on Ruckus99 on Twitter, and Thursday's going to be me, Joe Francis, all for Boxing.com and our podcast. We put it up on 4boxings.com, and I think I got my SoundCloud issue fixed, so I'll be able to put it there soon. And we're definitely going to talk about this fight coming up because luckily February is not looking too shabby, and this normally does not happen in boxing where February starts the lull until May. But so far, it's looking good.
If you want to reach out to me, you know what it is on Twitter, Brother JR at Brother JR76. If you like what you've heard this evening, please hit that like button on YouTube. Hit that subscribe button on YouTube. Also subscribe to us on iTunes and SoundCloud. And please leave a review on iTunes, especially. We'd love to hear what you have to think of Pound for Pound Boxing Report. Want to thank Overhand. Want to thank Rotten Apple for their comments in the chat, for listening to us live. And as I said to begin the show, if you want to check out all things regarding Pound for Pound Boxing Report, blog page is the place to go to, P4P boxreport.wordpress.com. Again, check the right of the blog page. You'll find links to where to find us all over social media, all over the interwebs. It's also where to listen to us on all available podcast formats, minus Spotify, and where to donate. Let donation be the best nation. Again, I don't care if it's $1, $2, $5, $10, whatever you can spare. If you have any spare change available, will surely help the production of this podcast. On the next episode, we will do a recap of the Kovalev Alvarez rematch, the recap of Oscar Valdez and his comeback to the ring against Tommosone, Richard Commey, and Chaniev for the vacant IBF lightweight belt. Teofimo Lopez, to many the hottest prospect in boxing as he's fighting a good test in Diego Magdaleno. And we will do a preview of Gervonta Take Davis. He's returning to the ring to fight Abner Mars. Alberto Machado, who could very well be the best in the world at 130 pounds. He's fighting a guy by the name of Ciancio Ray Vargas. He's defending his junior super bantamweight belt, excuse me. So we will talk about all of those bouts. Jose Ramirez, he's also defending his junior lightweight title against Jose Cepeda. So we'll talk about all those bouts. Ray Beltran, he's going to be fighting on the Ramirez Cepeda undercard. So yeah, a lot of boxing over the next week on the weekend of the 10th. So for Gail from Communities Digital News, from Jacob from Jab Hook, Daniel from The Inscriber, I'm your host, Michael. This has been episode 238 of the Pound for Pound Box Report. We will see you next time. Everyone have a good evening. Good night.
Peace, everybody.